She planned a quiet gift, a simple trip. Her son canceled it, with her own money. What began as a necklace became a war for her identity. Behind every "mom, we're just trying to help" was a blueprint to erase her. Now she's done being agreeable. And the mother they underestimated is about to rewrite everything. Because when silence is broken, some families don't survive the sound. 1. Introduction. The gift that broke everything. 1,200 words. I was never one for indulgences. For 32 years, I graded papers in red ink, scrubbed gum off desks, and taught restless teenagers how to respect silence, literature, and themselves. Even after retirement, I still fold my towels in thirds, still wake at 6 a.m. out of habit. But this year, my 68th, I felt something different stir, a kind of flutter, like the first wind before the monsoon. It started with a necklace. I saw it in a travel magazine while waiting for my oil change. Santa Fe Artisans, the caption read. Hand-cut turquoise, mounted in recycled silver, shaped like petals blooming midwinter. It reminded me of Delilah, my daughter-in-law. Sharp, elegant, proud, not someone you buy mall perfume for. Something told me she might appreciate a piece that wasn't filtered through her curated world of minimalist, expensive taste. Something real. So I planned the trip. Not a grand one. 3 days, 2 nights. I'd stay at a modest adobe inn near the plaza, walk through the weekend market, eat chile rellenos from a paper plate, buy the necklace, gift it to Delilah for her birthday with a handwritten note, for the woman my son chose, from the woman who chose him first. I was giddy. At my age, that's rare and not to be dismissed. When I told Cameron, I expected the kind of distracted smile he gives me now, half listening, half texting, but he looked up sharply. You're going alone? I nodded, stirring sugar into my tea. He exchanged a glance with Delilah, who was arranging Everly's snacks into perfect rows. You know, Mom, he began. Maybe hold off. Delilah and I were just talking. We think it's better if you don't go. I laughed. At first. Why wouldn't I go? I already booked the hotel. Delilah didn't look up. It's not really her style. The whole turquoise thing. Seems like a lot of effort for something she won't even wear. I didn't ask if she'd wear it every day, I said, too sharply. It's a birthday gift. Cameron's jaw tightened. We just think it's not necessary. Besides, you don't need to spend on flights right now. I blinked. I already moved the money. It's from my account. Cameron hesitated. It was from the joint savings, Mom. You authorized me years ago to manage your online banking, remember? I just reversed the transfer. We'll talk about better budgeting soon, okay? I don't remember standing up, but I remember the chair scraping back like a scream. You did what? I'm trying to help you be smart about things, he said. Delilah and I, look, we're not trying to control you. We just think this trip is impulsive. My throat went dry. That word, impulsive, as if I were a teenager sneaking out with a fake ID. I've never been impulsive in my life, I said, each word heavy. I saved for that trip myself, for a gift I wanted to give. Delilah finally looked at me, coolly. It's not that we don't appreciate the gesture, it's just not how we do things. We're trying to cultivate experiences over stuff. And just like that, I was obsolete. The rest of the day was a blur. I sat in my room for hours, the printed itinerary untouched on the dresser. I stared at the blue ink of the confirmation email like it was a lie. By dinner, the cancellation had come through. Cameron had handled it, so you wouldn't have to worry. I didn't eat. I went to bed early and lay awake for hours. At some point, I got up and opened the cedar box beneath my bed. Inside were letters, faded, folded, tear-stained in some places. My late husband's handwriting curled like smoke across yellowing paper. One in particular had always stayed with me, written after Cameron was born, on hospital stationery. You always second-guess your instincts, he wrote, but not with our boy. The way you hold him, the way you calm him, it's like you already know what kind of man he'll be. Don't ever stop trusting that voice inside. I used to believe I knew Cameron better than anyone. Now I wonder if I raised a stranger, or if he was always like this, and I was simply too in love with the role of mother to notice the erosion. I'm not stupid. I know how families shift. Boundaries blur when generations overlap under one roof. But this wasn't shifting. This was something being taken from me, subtly, rationally, and with a smile. And maybe the most frightening thing wasn't that my son thought he had the right to cancel my trip. It was that a part of me almost believed he did. I've come to understand that revolutions don't always begin with fanfare. They often start with a whisper. In my own home, that whisper took the form of small corrections. A tisk over my cooking, a sidelong glance at my outfit, a muted sigh when I spoke about what I wanted. More insidious than any shout, these quiet judgments settled around me like dust. They were small, diffuse, and growing. It began innocently enough. A new recipe from Delilah, she said, modern and healthy, though she'd tweak it until I barely recognized my own dish. A pinch more turmeric, she'd suggest, inserting yet another flavor of her choosing. Or I'd set the table, and she'd rearrange the napkins, just so, commenting, "You know, Mom, it's 2025, not 1995. We can't use Grandma's old linen anymore." It was never direct. No raised voices, just soft corrections, delivered with a practiced, almost rehearsed concern. I find I cook less now. The kitchen no longer smells like me. It smells like her reinterpretation of me. My wooden spoons lean idle in their jar. The stove stays cold sometimes, and I eat the takeout I used to frown upon, a reminder that I'm still allowed choice, in theory. Then there's the clothes. I used to wear color. Now I show up in neutral-toned tops, safe, subdued, easy. Delilah always says gently, "These look nice too," tapping at my polished monochrome. Another suggestion, different cut, lighter fabric, something more contemporary. I nod and smile. When I get home, I change out of the dress she chose. It's small rebellion, private. The dress waits in my closet, unworn. This suggestive improvement bleeds into ideas. Conversations, opinions, even my own memories. A family friend mentions the retirement community I'd considered. Delilah arrives with brochures for upscale condos, open floor plans, smart technology. She breathes the word future like a talisman. I say nothing. Let her choose path after path until I feel I have no say. Cameron never says anything. He never defends me. He nods in agreement. He echoes her words. "Yeah, Mom, times are changing. You really should let us help more." His tone is neutral, but I feel the shift. Where once we'd laugh about the past, trading memories, he now watches her more than me at dinner. When I voice a preference, books over streaming, a walk over a workout class, he sighs, gently chastising me. Stuck in the past, he's called me once. I let it slide, but the wound is there. My home is the same, but no longer mine. My opinions feel like whispering ghosts, ignored or politely dismissed. It's loneliness amplified. I crave space. A corner to remember that I'm still here, not merely a character in someone else's rewrite. Yet each correction tightens around me, like the slow pull of shrink wrap. Then Everly stepped in. My granddaughter, bright-eyed, innocent, full of curious questions. She's the only one who sees me undiluted, undisguised. One evening at dinner, she tilted her head and asked, "Grandma, why don't you like Delilah's soup?" She spooned something orange, then stopped. All eyes turned to me. Caught off guard, I replied the truth. "I like my soup." Embarrassed by my tone, I tried to smile it off. Everly looked at Delilah. For the first time, Delilah paused. Cameron looked uncomfortable. I felt something shift. Everly didn't let it go. "You always tell Grandma to add turmeric," she said. "But Grandma's soup is yummy too." My heart swelled. More than the critique, it was the betrayal of silence, that I'd let them shape my world without protest. And now this child, with her small truth, cracked something open. That night I lay awake, thinking of how I used to laugh freely in this house, how I used to decide my afternoon walks, the books I read, the recipes I tried. I think so quietly that this isn't how my life ends, being modernized into someone else's idea. I began to speak up, not harshly, but clearly. "I made a soup, if you'd like to try it." I offered her a bowl. She paused, saw the look in my eyes, and took it. She said nothing. She tasted. She nodded. That was enough. I insisted on orange shirts again, bright and unafraid. I stepped outside to mower days, even when she suggested a lawn service. She frowned, but I stood firm. These were my choices, and I had not stopped having them. Through it all, the tension ripened. Delilah's eyes hardened. Cameron grew cold, not angry, but distant. He began covering up by asking to meet me outside when she stepped in, then rejoined her without me. That silence, more than anything, cuts through to the marrow. Then the twist. I found the paperwork. Hidden in a drawer I rarely open, the new financial plan they'd drafted, stamped Delilah Investments. I flipped through accounts, new beneficiaries, monthly draws, my signature, in fonts I didn't recognize. Cameron's name in line with hers. She'd positioned herself as the family's future matriarch, handling everything I used to. Unbeknownst to me, until now, they'd slipped control over my finances, my independence, under the guise of help. The feeling was betrayal, sharp and cold. Anger flared in my chest. I sat with those papers, hands white-knuckled around them, feeling suddenly exposed and thin. She had taken my choice, my dignity, my autonomy, quietly, across months of tweaks. I thought of Everly, of that moment at dinner, how innocent bluntness can crack open secrets. I thought of Cameron's silence, his unwillingness to speak up. I realized belatedly he cared more about peace than principle, and Delilah cared more about power than partnership. This is where the conflict stands now. I'm still quiet, still gentle, but I'm no longer shrinking. I call my bank tomorrow. I'll ask for copies of the trust documents, question why my signature appears where I didn't sign. I'll ask Cameron to lunch, ask him to look in my eyes and tell me why he let this happen. Inside, I'm wounded, yes, but I'm alive too. My home is no longer just theirs to reshape. I will take up space again. I will cook the soup I like. I will wear the shirts I choose. I'll protect what's mine. Their takeover was subtle. My pushback may well be louder. I learned early that love had rules, not the kind written down, but the kind you feel in the walls. The hush after a slammed door, the heavy pause when eyes won't meet yours. My mother never shouted. She didn't need to. Her silence was a weapon, polished and sharp, and she wielded it with expert precision. I used to think quiet meant peace. It took me years, decades really, to realize it meant power. My childhood home was tidy, immaculate. The kitchen floor gleamed, the couch cushions fluffed every morning. But there were no messes of any kind. Not in the rooms, not in conversation. If I cried, my mother would wait, unmoved, until the sound stopped. Then she'd resume whatever she was doing, folding towels, slicing fruit, as though nothing had happened. "Compose yourself," she'd say, without looking. "No one likes a girl who needs too much." I don't remember being hugged, not really. There were hand pats, brief and utilitarian. When I showed her a drawing or a school paper, she'd nod. "Acceptable," she'd murmur, "but let's work on your handwriting." Praise was rare, affection even rarer. What mattered was correctness, obedience, order. My father was the gentler one. His voice was softer, his presence a balm in the stiff air of our home. But he was a quiet man, a man who kept peace by keeping still. "Let your mother handle it," he said so often it could have been carved into the mantel. I would look at him with wide, pleading eyes, and he'd give me a faint smile and a shrug, retreating behind his paper or into the garage. He loved me, I think, but his love was passive, like rain falling far off in the distance. You see it, you know it's there, but you never feel it land. And so I learned, needs are dangerous, feelings are messy, silence is safe. This framework shaped everything that followed. I became quiet and accommodating, praised by teachers for being so well-behaved, such a sweet girl. They didn't see that I wasn't behaving. I was surviving. I did what I was told. I didn't speak unless asked. I apologized for things that weren't my fault. In that silence, I mistook stillness for serenity. When I met Cameron's father, he was kind and charismatic, gentle in a way that reminded me of my dad, yet bolder somehow. He told jokes, complimented my smile, held doors open. I mistook this lightness for safety. We married young. I thought I was building something new, escaping the coldness of my childhood. But what I built instead was a softer version of the same house. He, too, avoided conflict. He, too, deferred, sometimes to me, more often to his work, his moods, his habits. We didn't fight much, but we didn't talk much either. When I brought up concerns, he'd sigh and rub his temples. "You always find problems," he'd say. "Just let things be." And I did. I let things be when the bills piled up and he wouldn't discuss them. I let things be when he forgot birthdays, when he started sleeping in the other room, just for a few nights. I folded peace like a blanket and tucked it into every silent corner of our life. I raised Cameron in that house, my sweet, observant boy. I tried to give him the warmth I never had, but old patterns run deep. I praised his good grades, baked cookies on Fridays, kept routines stable. Yet when he cried, I found myself freezing. Not from cruelty, from confusion. I didn't know how to comfort, only how to correct. I gave advice instead of arms. I offered solutions when he needed softness. Still, he loved me. Still, we laughed. I believed that was enough. But now I see it, looking back through the lens of my unraveling identity. I passed on a legacy of emotional caution, of substituting order for intimacy, of mistaking deference for devotion. When Cameron married Delilah, I was cautiously hopeful. She was bright, ambitious, articulate. I admired that in her. But she was also sharp in ways I recognized too well. She filled silences like my mother had, not with quiet, but with critique. At first, I told myself she was helping. She had ideas, energy, a modern outlook. But over time, it felt less like inclusion and more like invasion. The way she corrected me in front of guests. The way she restructured holidays without asking. The way Cameron began echoing her tone. I saw my younger self in their dance. She, confidently leading. He, quietly agreeing. And me, once again, shrinking to make space. Only now, the shrinking hurts more. Because I know what it costs. The lessons of my childhood, the chill of withheld affection, the burden of compliance, still live inside me. They taught me how to survive, but not how to thrive. They built a life that looks peaceful on the outside and eroded me from the inside. What I thought was strength was often silence. What I thought was grace was often fear. And now, as I face this slow coup in my own home, my thoughts dismissed, my choices overridden, I realize the roots run back to that spotless house, that tidy, loveless palace where I first learned that being good meant being quiet. But I am not a child anymore. And maybe it's not too late to teach myself something different. It was Delilah's birthday, but I was the one who left with my heart in pieces. The evening was curated, every detail selected with the kind of exacting polish Delilah preferred. A rooftop restaurant overlooking the water, gold-rimmed place cards, a pre-arranged playlist humming in the background, classical pieces, upbeat enough to feel celebratory, restrained enough not to offend. I wore a dress I hated because Delilah had complimented it once. I smiled because Cameron had asked me to please be gracious, just for tonight. I brought a gift, something handmade, personal, though I knew it would pale next to the sleek gadgets and curated boxes passed down the table. Still, I had hope. I always start with hope. The speeches began over dessert. Well, her speeches. One by one, friends and family toasted Delilah. Her vision, her leadership, her generosity. Cameron stood, cleared his throat, and raised his glass. "She's the center of our family," he said, "the glue holding us together. I don't know where we'd be without her." He didn't glance at me. I waited. I thought surely someone would say something that included me. A nod to shared history. A thank you for raising the man who married her. A mention at the very least. But the moment passed. The plates were cleared. Laughter rose. No one noticed the empty space that had been carved around me. Delilah leaned in at one point, faux concerned. "You okay, Mom? You look a little tired." I nodded. I'm always tired in rooms where I don't exist. And then, like a match struck in a silent forest, Everly's voice rang out. Loud, clear, and devastating in its innocence. "Grandma, if we're family, why don't you live with us?" The table hushed. Delilah's fork paused midair. Cameron let out a too loud chuckle. "Sweetheart," he said, "Grandma has her own house. She likes it that way." Everly looked at me, confused. "But if we love her, why isn't she part of the family house?" I opened my mouth to answer and found I had no words. Because what could I say? That love, in this family, had started to look a lot like exile? I excused myself not long after, blamed a headache, kissed Everly's forehead, thanked the waiter, waved off Cameron's half-hearted, "Want me to walk you out?" The drive home was silent. I didn't turn on the radio. The city lights blurred through the windshield as tears welled, then spilled. I hadn't touched my dinner. In the quiet of my kitchen, I sat with my hands folded in my lap, like a child waiting for permission to speak. The table was bare, my gift bag still in hand. I placed it gently on the counter, unwrapped it myself. It was a framed photo of the family from 3 years ago, before the silencing began. Before my voice became background noise, I stared at it for a long time. Then I went to my bedroom and cried. Not just from hurt, but from realization. Something inside me cracked, subtle but irrevocable. This wasn't just a dinner. This wasn't just a missed mention or a thoughtless speech. This was the end of a role I'd held for decades. Mother, matriarch, pillar. They had moved on, and I had been demoted without notice. The next morning, I brewed coffee and opened my laptop, determined to lose myself in routine. But the inbox, mostly cluttered with store ads and newsletters, held something unexpected. An old thread. I don't remember why I searched his name. Maybe I was looking for comfort. Maybe for proof that I wasn't imagining it all. What I found instead was the email. Subject: House Plans. From Cameron Davis. To Delilah Ashton. Date: March 14th. Body: Mom's finally softening. Keep the pressure, and the house will be ours by Christmas. It was short, blunt, clinical, my chest seized. Keep the pressure. They weren't just dismissing me. They were strategizing, mapping the terrain of my life like real estate prospects. My independence wasn't an oversight, it was an obstacle. And they were counting on my silence to hand it over, piece by piece. All those moments, Delilah's helpful suggestions, Cameron's passive alignment, the constant erasure, clicked into place. This wasn't family dynamics, this was a takeover. I stared at the screen, heart thudding like a drum. My hands shook, my coffee went cold beside me. There it was, the proof that I hadn't simply misread, overreacted, imagined. The proof that love in this house had strings, and that I, once the giver of everything, had become a means to an end. Something hardened inside me. This breaking point wasn't loud. It didn't explode with shouts or slamming doors. It arrived with the soft click of a mouse and the quiet burn of betrayal. They wanted my silence. Instead, they gave me a reason to speak. The printouts lay on the kitchen table like open wounds, 3 pages, black and white, damning in their clarity. I had highlighted the sentence. I don't know why. Maybe to keep my eyes from slipping past it, pretending it didn't mean what it did. Mom's finally softening. Keep the pressure, and the house will be ours by Christmas. There was no signature, no apology, no nuance, just facts. When Cameron knocked on the door later that afternoon, casual, unaware, I opened it slowly, hand clenched around the pages. I had planned words, measured ones, but they fled at the sight of his face, familiar and foreign at once. We stood in silence, the air heavy. He smiled, half-hearted. Hey, Mom, Delilah said you left dinner early. You okay? That was all it took. Not a real question, not concern, just image control, a box to check. I found your email, I said. His expression faltered, just for a second. He recovered fast. Too fast. Mom, he began, stepping forward. You wouldn't understand. I slapped the papers against his chest so hard they crumpled. Don't tell me what I can't understand, I snapped. My voice was shaking, but not from fear. Something else surged in me. Hot, volcanic, righteous. He looked down at the papers, then up at me. His jaw tightened. It's not what it looks like. It's exactly what it looks like, I said. You lied. You let her erase me piece by piece while you stood there nodding. You were planning your inheritance while I was still alive. He reached for a chair. I didn't let him sit. I thought you wanted help, he said, arms spreading in a mock gesture of reason. We thought you'd appreciate a simpler life. Less burden. Burden? My voice cracked on the word. You mean my house? My autonomy? My life? That was the burden? He didn't answer. I stepped closer. For the first time, I saw him not as my boy, not the infant I'd rocked, not the teenager I'd cried over, but as a man. A man who had betrayed me with the smile of someone who thought he could get away with it. I didn't even know the sound of my own scream until it left me. Raw, primal. You let her decide who I am, I shouted. You stood by while she critiqued my food, my clothes, my mind. You didn't defend me. You dismissed me. And now I know why. Because I wasn't a person to you. I was a project, a hurdle. He blinked rapidly. That's not fair. No, I said, quieter now, trembling. What's not fair is being made to feel invisible in my own home. What's not fair is giving everything, everything, and being rewarded with manipulation. Cameron tried to talk again, but I lifted a hand. For the first time, it silenced him. You need to leave, I said. His eyes widened. What? You heard me. Take your keys. Leave. Mom, don't. I said leave. He stared at me for a long moment, then without a word turned and walked out. The door clicked shut behind him with a finality that echoed. I sank into a chair, breath heaving, heart pounding. My hands were still shaking, but I didn't feel regret. I didn't feel guilt. I felt something unfamiliar, clarity. This wasn't rage for rage's sake. This was decades of silence finally being broken. I hadn't screamed because I was unstable. I screamed because I had been conditioned not to. Because I had learned from my mother that peace meant quiet. That love meant obedience. But love should never erase you. It should never feel like a trap. I saw my life in layers. My mother's cool distance, my husband's passivity, the way I'd folded myself to keep things easy. And then Cameron, continuing the cycle. Not with malice, but with entitlement. With a learned blindness to the damage he was doing. He had taken my silence for softness. He had taken my quiet for consent. But he was wrong. I wasn't weak. I was trained to seem weak. And now, I was unlearning. I stood up and walked through the house, touching things that were mine. Not as a woman clinging to remnants, but as someone reclaiming space. The photo on the wall, Cameron at 5, me beside him, grinning with flour on my face. The recipe cards in the kitchen drawer, written in my mother's neat but loveless script, rewritten in my own loopier hand. The bookshelf I'd assembled alone, the curtains I had chosen, the garden I still tended, even when no one noticed. This house was not a prize. It was not a reward for patience. It was a testament to endurance, to growth, to survival. I pressed my palm to the table and whispered, I'm still here. The wind outside picked up, and the chimes by the porch rang softly. Uninvited music, but mine. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting to be invited into my own life. I was in it, fully. And I wasn't giving it away. I didn't pack much, just enough for the night. A toothbrush, a clean blouse, my journal, and a pair of walking shoes. I told no one where I was going. The house, once mine, had become a battlefield. And I needed one night, just one, away from its shattered foundations. The motel sat off a county road, tucked behind a rusted diner and a shuttered auto shop. Its sign flickered, vacancy. The air smelled like wet gravel and gas station coffee. It was perfect. At the front desk, a woman with short gray curls and nicotine-stained fingers greeted me with a voice like worn leather. Her name tag read Cheryl. Just you tonight? She asked, not unkindly. I nodded. Trouble? I hesitated, then offered, family. She smiled, slow and knowing. Ain't it always? The room was modest. A twin bed, a cracked mirror, a humming mini fridge. The walls were the color of old oatmeal, and the air conditioner wheezed like it might quit any minute. But the door locked, and no one would find me here. I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out my journal, the one I'd kept hidden in a drawer, where no one thought to look. Its pages held my real voice. I flipped past old entries until I found a blank one, dated it, and began to write. But I didn't write for myself this time. I wrote to him. Dear Michael, I never thought I'd lose our son this way. Not to death. To distance, to something colder, and I wonder, would you have seen it sooner? Would you have known how to stop it? I paused, staring at the ink as it bled into the paper. Tears pricked but didn't fall. I've spent years playing peacekeeper, years thinking that being needed was the same as being loved, but what I thought was love was often just tolerance, management, a quiet expectation that I'd keep folding myself smaller and smaller. I think I disappeared somewhere after you died. Not all at once, just a little every year. And now I'm starting to want something more. Not for them, for me. I stopped writing when the knock came. Soft, 2 quick taps. Cheryl stood outside holding 2 steaming cups. I made extra, she said. Didn't want to drink alone. I opened the door. We sat outside on the low concrete step, sipping what turned out to be the strongest, most bitter coffee I'd ever tasted. She lit a cigarette and squinted at the sky like it owed her an apology. You ever tell someone the truth and have them twist it into something ugly? she asked, exhaling smoke. All the time, I said. She nodded. My sister got my mother's house. I was the one who stayed, changed diapers, drove her to appointments, paid her bills. But I wasn't responsible enough, they said. I got the Buick. She got the deed. I laughed softly. I got the soup ladle. Cheryl smiled. Better weapon. We talked for an hour, maybe more. Two women on the edge of exhaustion, comparing emotional war stories like old soldiers. I didn't tell her everything, but I told her more than I've ever said to anyone outside the walls of blood and obligation. And when I finally said, I think my son wants to erase me, she didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned in, voice low. Then you make damn sure they remember you. We said goodnight with a shared look of recognition. Not pity, not sympathy. Something harder, something earned. Inside, I finished the letter. Michael, I miss who we used to be, but I don't miss who I've become trying to keep everyone else whole. I'm not just a mother, I'm a woman too. And tonight I remembered that. I'm coming back for what's mine, all of it. I sealed the letter in my journal and slept with it beside me. In the morning, I checked out just after sunrise. The sky was still gray, the road quiet. I thanked Cheryl and promised to write. She nodded, gave me a pack of gum, and said, Next time you disappear, make it somewhere nicer. I smiled for the first time in days. But that smile didn't last. When I pulled into my driveway, something felt off. The mailbox was ajar, the porch light was on, and the key, my key, didn't turn. I tried again. Nothing. I stepped back, heart pounding. On the door was a folded notice, legal letterhead. My name typed in bold. Notice of temporary guardianship under medical evaluation statute, per emergency claim filed by Cameron Davis. I couldn't read the rest. My vision blurred. The locks had been changed. My son had filed a claim of mental instability, to protect me, to assume power of attorney, to take everything. And the worst part? I had left for one night of breathing, one night of clarity, one night to be a person instead of a role, and that was all it took for him to erase me from my life with the stroke of a pen. I sank to the front step. My bag thudded beside me. I had nowhere to go. No house, no legal ground. But I had something else. The letter, the truth, my voice, and this time, I wouldn't be silenced. The legal office smelled like lemon cleaner and old books. Jordan McAllister sat across from me, pen poised, his expression unreadable as I laid out my story. The isolation, the manipulation, the email. I kept my voice steady. I refused to cry. When I finished, he tapped the table lightly with the pen. This is coercive control, he said, and potentially fraudulent use of power of attorney. You've got a case. Those words landed like breath in my lungs. I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't unstable. I was right. He filed an emergency motion that same day. You won't get the house back today, he warned, but we'll stop them from taking anything more. We'll ask for reinstatement and a full psychiatric review. Independent. 2 days later, I stood outside the courthouse in a borrowed blazer, my letter to Michael folded in my purse like armor. I was scared, but not of losing. I was scared of being erased without even fighting. The courtroom was cold and clinical. Cameron sat with his attorney, stone-faced. Delilah wasn't there, but her presence pulsed in every whispered word between them. My heart pounded as the clerk called my case. Jordan stood first. Your Honor, we're here today because a woman has been stripped of her agency by those she trusted most. The opposition claims instability. We claim manipulation. Cameron's lawyer rose, crisp and confident. This is a simple case of concern. Mr. Davis acted out of love and necessity. His mother has exhibited signs of declining mental clarity. The judge turned to me. Mrs. Davis, would you like to speak? I rose. My knees trembled, but my voice did not. I am not confused, I said. I am not dangerous. I am not delusional. I am a mother whose child mistook silence for consent and kindness for incompetence. My son wants my house. He said as much, in writing. Jordan handed the email to the judge. I watched the judge's eyes move across the lines, brow furrowing. Do you have witnesses? He asked. Jordan nodded. Yes, Your Honor. A neutral third party, the respondent's granddaughter. My stomach tightened. They brought in Everly. She wore a pale blue dress and looked confused but curious. A court-appointed child specialist asked her gentle questions. Sweetheart, the woman said, can you tell me how your mommy talks about Grandma? Everly tilted her head. She says Grandma's too old to know what's good for her. She says Grandma's gonna break the house. The courtroom stilled. The judge leaned forward. Does your mommy say anything else? Everly blinked. Sometimes she says Grandma's crazy, but she doesn't mean it mean. Even Cameron looked shaken. Jordan stood again. No further questions. Cameron's attorney declined to cross-examine. The judge sat back, steepling his fingers. I'm granting temporary reinstatement of rights, he said, pending a full psychological evaluation conducted by an independent doctor, not appointed by the son or his counsel. A weight lifted from my chest. You may not enter your home without law enforcement present, the judge added to Cameron, and you are to cease all financial management actions until further ruling. Jordan gave my arm a gentle squeeze. I nodded, too stunned to speak. Outside, the air was sharp and bright. Everly ran up to me before her father could stop her. I didn't do anything wrong, did I? I crouched, hands on her shoulders. No, sweetheart. You told the truth, and you were very brave. She smiled, not fully understanding, and hugged me tight. Cameron approached, hesitating. His face was unreadable. You're not the only one who feels betrayed, he said quietly. No, I replied, but I'm the only one who was treated like I didn't exist. He didn't argue, he just turned away. That night I didn't sleep, but I did rest. I lay in a borrowed guest room at Cheryl's house, she'd insisted, and stared at the ceiling, hand on my journal. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time, I was fighting as myself. The new condo smelled like fresh paint and lemon wood polish. A modest one-bedroom on the second floor, overlooking a small park with swings that creaked in the wind. It had minimal furniture, just what I could afford. But the quiet was mine. Every chair, every mug, every misplaced sock was a choice I made. I slept on a mattress on the floor for the first 2 weeks. Jordan had offered to help, but I declined. There was something sacred about rebuilding alone. The walls were bare until I found my old watercolor set, buried at the bottom of a trunk I hadn't opened in years. The paints were dried, but revivable. The brushes frayed, but familiar. I set them beside the window where the light hit just right in the afternoons. The first painting was a mess. My hands shook, my strokes were clumsy, but I kept at it. By the third week, colors began to speak for me in ways words no longer could. It was during a meeting at the women's group that I said aloud for the first time, I don't think I was ever given permission to just be. The circle nodded, quiet murmurs of agreement filling the space. Most of them were younger, some older. All had stories like mine, erased boundaries, control disguised as care, love conditional on silence. We met weekly in the basement of a library, no judgment, no platitudes. One woman said, we're like ghosts learning to haunt our own lives in reverse. That stuck with me. Cheryl came by most weekends with groceries I didn't ask for, and stories I didn't realize I needed. She brought mismatched mugs and a thick quilt, too ugly for anyone else. I told her it was perfect. Jordan visited once too. Dropped off a binder labeled Life After Power of Attorney, full of legal resources, and a tiny cactus he said was hard to kill, like you. I didn't laugh. Not right away. But later that night, I set the cactus next to my window, next to the brushes and the jar of water stained blue. I was learning to live slowly, deliberately. Then, just as the quiet began to feel sacred instead of sharp, I received the video. It came via email, no subject line, no message, just a link. I hesitated. Then I clicked. Cameron appeared on screen. Eyes red-rimmed, voice trembling. Mom, he said, I've been wrong. All of it. The house, the papers, the way Delilah and I handled things. It was never about hurting you. I just thought you needed help. I didn't know how to say that. He paused. I miss you. Everly misses you. Please, maybe we can talk. He looked older, tired. I cried. I didn't want to, but I did. I paused the video halfway through and paced the condo, hands over my mouth. The apology wasn't perfect, but it felt like a beginning. I showed it to Jordan. He didn't say anything for a while. Then he pulled out his phone. An hour later, he called back. It was scripted, he said. Delilah recorded it. They've already filed a new motion to dismiss your claim based on your emotional instability. This time paired with their gesture of reconciliation. My chest went cold. Your response to the video, Jordan continued, could legally imply consent to withdraw. That's what they're banking on. I nodded, even though he couldn't see. They hadn't changed, and I wasn't going back. That night, I sat by the window and painted again. No outlines, no reference photo, just motion and memory. I painted a silhouette of a woman, head turned slightly, eyes closed, not in surrender, but in rest. She wasn't missing anything. She was becoming. I never knew it was possible to love someone and fear them at the same time. But that's where I live now, wedged between memory and self-preservation, between the boy I raised and the man who quietly betrayed me. Every instinct in my body still calls him my son, even now, even after everything. Some mornings I wake thinking I should call him, that if I just said the right words, found the right tone, I could remind him of who we used to be. I picture him at 5, barefoot in the yard, clutching a grass-stained ball, shouting, "Mom, look!" with a smile so wide it made my heart ache. In my dreams, he's always small, always running toward me, always calling me safe. I wake up crying more often than not, and then the reality rushes in. The email, the courtroom, the locks, the memory of watching my own child gamble with my dignity like it was a hand-me-down. And the ache turns sharp. At the women's group, I tried to talk about it. "I love him," I said. "I still love him." The room was quiet, patient. No judgment, just the kind of stillness that lets a truth unfold. "But I don't think he loves me. Not who I am now. Not the version that says no." One woman murmured, "They only love the version that makes them feel right." I nodded. But it wasn't enough to soothe the wound. Because motherhood isn't logic. It's not even memory. It's muscle, reflex, a kind of haunting devotion. The guilt comes in waves, laced with questions I can't answer. Did I break him? Was I too soft, too distant, too afraid? Was my silence the soil that grew his entitlement? One night at group, something inside me broke open. I was recounting a moment, one of many, where I had swallowed my discomfort when he dismissed me. I said, I wanted to speak up, but I didn't want to lose him. And suddenly, the tears came. Not polite ones, the kind that hijack your whole body. My chest heaved and the room blurred. Cheryl was beside me in an instant, grounding my hands in hers. Through sobs, I heard myself say it. I gave him everything, and he used it to erase me. That's when Jordan's sister, Nadia, who joined the group recently, said quiet and firm, "That wasn't love, that was sacrifice. And sacrifice without reciprocity is exploitation." Her words landed like a revelation, because I'd been calling it love all along, the bending, the enduring, the silence. I'd worn it like a badge, like a mother should. But real love doesn't demand self-erasure. Real love has boundaries. That night I went home and opened my journal. I didn't write to Michael this time, I wrote to Cameron. "You were my son long before you were Delilah's husband or anyone's heir. I held your fevered forehead through the night. I stood at school recitals and clapped the loudest. I covered for your mistakes when you couldn't face them. I taught you to speak and forgot to teach you to listen. I confused obedience with peace, and now you do too. But here is my truth. I cannot love you by vanishing for you. I cannot be safe for you while being unsafe for myself. If you ever come back, come as a man who sees me. Not as a mother to conquer, but a woman who lived. I didn't send it. Maybe I never will. But writing it felt like reclaiming something. Some days I still miss him. Not the man who changed the locks, but the boy who called me home. The boy who believed I could fix anything. But I can't fix this. Not for him. Not anymore. I can only rebuild myself. And that means loving with clarity. Because love without boundaries isn't love. It's surrender. And I'm done surrendering. The table was set with mismatched plates and cloth napkins that didn't match the season. I didn't care. I'd made everything from scratch. My recipes, my hands, my choices. A roast, a salad, warm bread, and the soup Delilah had always corrected. This time, I left it exactly the way I used to make it. At 6 o'clock sharp they arrived. Cameron stood in the doorway awkwardly. Delilah scanned the condo, eyes pausing on the bare walls and secondhand bookshelf. Everly rushed forward first, her tiny arms wrapping around my waist. "Hi, Grandma." I smiled and bent to hug her tightly. "Hi, baby, I'm so glad you're here." We sat in silence at first. Forks scraped plates. Ice clinked in glasses. Conversation hovered in the air like steam, rising, dissipating, never forming into something solid. I watched them both. Cameron, quieter than usual. Delilah, polite but brittle. Everly chattered between mouthfuls, unaware of the undercurrents. "I made the soup I used to make when you were little," I said, looking at Cameron. He nodded, chewing slowly. "I remember." Delilah sipped from her water and offered a strained smile. "It's nostalgic." I didn't respond. I waited until the main course was done, then wiped my hands on a napkin and stood. "There's something I want to say," I began. My voice didn't waver, not this time. They both looked up. "I didn't invite you here to fight. I didn't bring you to scold or to win. I brought you here to tell the truth." Cameron's jaw tensed. Delilah's eyes narrowed. "I was not a perfect mother," I continued. "I made mistakes. I stayed silent when I should have spoken. I let things happen in our house that I should have questioned. But I never stopped loving you. Not once. And I certainly never expected to have that love turned into a liability." Delilah set her fork down with a deliberate clink. "Are we doing this here?" she asked. Everly looked between us, frowning. I turned to her. "Sweetheart, can you help me for just a second in the kitchen?" Everly followed, curious. I handed her a cookie and whispered, "Stay here for just a moment, okay?" She nodded, swinging her legs from the counter. Back at the table, I sat down again. I looked directly at Delilah. "I don't blame you for trying to care for your family. I blame you for believing that care gave you the right to erase me." Delilah's nostrils flared. "You're twisting this. We were trying to protect you. By locking me out of my house? By using my granddaughter as a pawn? By scripting apologies to manipulate legal claims?" Cameron flinched. "I made you feel unsafe," he said finally. "I see that now." Delilah stood abruptly. "This was a mistake. We shouldn't have come." She turned to Cameron. "Let's go." He didn't move. "Cameron," she hissed. He looked at me, then at the kitchen, where Everly hummed to herself. "I'm going to help clean up," he said. Delilah froze. Her lips parted, then closed again. She stared at him, then at me. "You're ruining everything," she said, and then she left. The door shut quietly, but it felt louder than any slam. I turned toward the kitchen, swallowing the ache in my chest. Everly ran out and hugged me, arms tight around my middle. "Can I come back next week?" I nodded, voice breaking. "You can come back anytime." Later that night, after Cameron left in silence and Everly's laughter still echoed in the air, I received the news in a message forwarded by Jordan. Delilah had filed for divorce. Grounds: irreconcilable differences. Subtext: you chose your mother. You broke the rules. She blamed him for ruining everything. But for the first time, I didn't feel ruined. I felt whole. The first time I saw one of my paintings in a gallery window, I didn't cry. I smiled, wide and quiet, and stood across the street, watching strangers stop to look. They tilted their heads, leaning closer, pointing gently. One of them even took a photo. It wasn't the best piece I'd made. The strokes were hesitant, the colors a little wild, but it was mine, my name printed beneath it. My hands in every line, no corrections, no adjustments. No Delilah hovering at my elbow with suggestions. The gallery had invited me for a showcase, a small local event, nothing grand, but the invitation came with words I hadn't heard in decades. "We love your voice." Voice, not style, not potential. Voice. Now, my condo walls bloom with color. I paint without apology. I hang my own work. I swap them out seasonally like love letters to myself. Outside the canvas, life has softened, widened. I laugh more, not out of politeness, but because things are funny. I eat alone in restaurants with a novel in my purse and no shame in my heart. I order wine on Tuesdays and dessert for no reason. And I'm dating. His name is Dennis. A retired marine biologist with wind-chapped hands and a slow, thoughtful way of speaking that reminds me of waves. We met at a library lecture. He asked if I'd like to get coffee, and I said yes without thinking. That night, I wrote in my journal. I didn't ask for permission, and it still felt right. Dennis doesn't fill my silences. He listens to them. When I told him I had once been locked out of my own life, he didn't flinch. He said, "Sometimes survival means burning the map so you can draw a better one." We take walks on Sundays. We send postcards to no one. He brought me seashells once and said, "They survived the sea, and now they're beautiful." At group, I talk less. I listen more. But when I do speak, I speak plainly. I'm writing a memoir now. It started with short entries, memories shaped like lessons, and slowly grew into something I couldn't ignore. I call it The Mother Who Stayed Too Long. It's not a book about regret. It's a book about recognition, about the years I lost to silence and the life I rebuilt by screaming once. I write in the mornings, paint in the afternoons, and let the evenings unfold. Sometimes Everly comes over with finger paints and wild stories. Sometimes I'm alone with jazz and ginger tea. Both feel full. One morning, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror, damp hair, reading glasses, smudges of paint on my cheek. And I didn't look away. I smiled. I knew her. She was mine again. Family used to mean sacrifice. It meant biting my tongue at dinner tables. It meant rearranging my thoughts to fit someone else's comfort. It meant being needed more than being known. But not anymore. Now family means being able to say no, and being loved anyway. It means showing up, not to perform, but to be present. It means that love doesn't hide in silence. It stands in the open, with arms wide and boundaries clear. Everly comes every other weekend now. No court orders, no custody fights, just a quiet arrangement between her and her heart. Cameron drops her off, sometimes stays for tea. We don't talk about the past, not yet, maybe not ever, but the silence between us has changed. Less avoidance, more respect. She and I are building a garden behind the condo. It's small, mostly herbs and tomatoes. She insists on calling the basil plant Sir Wiggle, for reasons only an 8-year-old can explain. We paint stones to mark each row. Lavender, parsley, memory. One afternoon, as we planted marigolds in a crooked line, she looked up and asked, "Grandma, are we a different kind of family?" I thought for a long moment. "Yes," I said, "but I think it's the kind that grows the best things." She smiled and nodded like she already knew. When she leaves on Sundays, I sometimes cry. Not from sadness, from the bittersweet ache of something nearly lost and miraculously found. And when she hugs me, tightly, fiercely, I feel the most sacred truth I've learned. That love without autonomy isn't love. That being chosen, not obligated, is the purest form of belonging. This morning, I walked through the Santa Fe Artisan Market, letting the sun warm my shoulders and the noise of life wrap around me like fabric. I passed stalls of turquoise earrings, embroidered shawls, fresh bread. Then I saw it, a small silver necklace, a single charm shaped like a key. I held it in my palm. Years ago, I would have bought it for Delilah, or for Cameron's approval. I would have searched for meaning through their eyes. Today, I bought it for myself, because the house they tried to take, I don't need it anymore. The life they tried to rewrite, I'm the author now. And this key? It unlocks only what I choose to open. I slipped it around my neck and walked into the afternoon, the sound of the market behind me, and the life I built ahead. If you've ever questioned where love ends and self-erasure begins, you're not alone. This isn't just her story. It might be yours, your mother's, or the version of you still waiting to speak. Keep turning pages that make you braver. Keep stories close that refuse to go quietly. Some bonds break, others set you free. Choose which ones you carry forward.